Hello everyone. Hope everyone's day is going well. Thank you for attending my demo today. We're going to be looking at interactive photorealistic renderings with Revit and V-Ray. So what we're going to be going over today is how the real power of V-Ray for Revit. So it was created to help designers quickly try out different concept designs and how they can switch to high quality production render mode quickly and easily. V-Ray is built to have all of the important features that you need easily and accessible on the ribbon. And best of all, you never have to leave Revit. So some of the really cool renderings that you can get out of Revit. I did not create any of these images, just so everyone knows. I got these from Chaos Group's website. So this is just a default Revit architecture model. You can see here it's extremely high quality and they got some nice bloom effects going on. Fully supports section boxes and you can swap out different V-Ray materials, which we will cover later. This is another image showing the high quality you can get out of fabric and material. And again, this is just a default Revit architecture model that comes with Revit, and you can see how you can export different render channels and achieve this amazing piece of work by going into Photoshop as well and adding in like the snow effects and everything like that. So next, what we'll be covering today is we'll be looking briefly at each tab in the ribbon, and then we'll talk about different rendering engines that V-Ray offers, different types of materials, some of the different environments that V-Ray offers, the different cameras, how you can do VR stereoscopic cameras. We'll talk about artificial lights. Then we'll talk about different rendering channels and the denoise feature. And then we'll conclude with, in the V-Ray frame buffer, talk about like image correction and how you can add stamps and things like that. All right, let's get to it. So as you can see, it's a plugin that just sits up on top of your ribbon up here. And you have to be in a 3D view in order to launch it. So the different types of rendering features or rendering engines that V-Ray comes with are, you have this render with V-Ray. This is the production renderer. This usually works best for producing final renders. It's also the best engine for using V-Ray Swarm. And it also supports rendering VR-ready images. So you can use like stereoscopic cameras and things like that, which we'll get into later. Next up, we have the V-Ray RT, which stands for real-time rendering. First and foremost, it supports GPU-based rendering. Given the right GPU card, you could produce a really faster image than V-Ray than you could with the production render. It renders live updates from different changes within the scene, such as like if you made changes to the sun or different camera positions or even the different materials. Like it updates this is all updated in real time. So this is a great way to test out different design ideas like light setups and what different materials look like, things like that. Next up, we have this export VR scene. So this is a fairly new feature with V-Ray 3.5. So if you have V-Ray for 3ds Max or Maya or any of those other software like Rhino or SketchUp, you can save out, or you can do an export VR scene, and that will bring in all the different types of materials and geometry and such, and bring that into, we'll say Maya, we'll use Maya for example, and then there you can do all your animations and have more total control over like compositing and doing all the 3D modeling and animation within there. And then another really powerful feature, if you go underneath the Revit or the rendering drop-down menu, you can have the swarm. So V-Ray for Swarm in V-Ray, it's a distributed rendering system that allows you to use multiple machines on a network to render out a single image. And it's all through the web. So you can log on to a local host in your network and control each computer that has V-Ray installed on it. And each Swarm machine needs a V-Ray 3.0 render node license. This means if you have 100 computers with Swarm on it, but only 5 V-Ray rendered node licenses, only 5 of those machines will be rendering at one time. So next up we have the frame buffer, which we will get into. the quality and draft previews. So these are the different qualities that you will get from Revit. So usually if you're doing like a real-time rendering or real-time updating, trying out different things, we'll just stay in draft mode, and we'll look at those in a second. And then obviously you can go all the way up to high, which is your final production quality. Your resolution, again, if you're just doing like a quick preview, you can just stay in the crop screen. You can change your default or your DPI to 75, save a little bit on time. You just keep it at 800 by 600, but you can go all the way up to 3840 by 2160. So if you're going to print quality and things like that, you can get all the way up to 600 DPI. We'll just switch that back to 800 by 600 here. Yep, the screen. Done. And then artificial lights. They're automatically supported. When you turn on artificial lights, it will support any light created in Revit. It uses it even with the IES files, and it supports spotlights and shape lights and things like that. So let's start just playing around here. So we'll just start an RT render, and to be able to play with the different views, you have to go over here and change out your views. So we'll just do from yard. We'll set that up as one. And we'll just start an RT render real quick. So right now we're telling it we want to start changing things in real time just to start playing around. So this is the V-Ray frame buffer that pops up here. And of course it's, oh, there we go. So as you can see, it's just going from my yard view, and any changes I make within here will update in real time. So let's just pop right over here to the from yard. I'll just minimize these real quick. I'll just get my scroll wheel, and I'll change this real quick. Close out of this real quick. Go back. And you can see it updated in real time. Same goes for if I were to go in here and swap out materials and such, which we can hop into now so we can see that. So I'm just going to pause this real quick. And like I said, you have to be in a 3D view, otherwise it's grayed out up here at the top. So I'll just go back to a 3D view. Actually just going to close out of this. So over here in your material browser, all Revit materials are automatically supported by V-Ray. If you'd like a more photorealistic rendering, then you can choose from their list of, or their selected materials that come with it. They come with a handful of them, which I'll show you in a second. These materials are more physically accurate materials that will give you a more photorealistic look if you so desire. So let's just go in here real quick. So you can see and if you go here, you can go to the drop-down menu, and it'll show you all the current materials that are in this view. Right now it's in my 3D view. So if I were to just go in here, we'll change this real quick. So you have this list of, you can either switch to a V-Ray material, or you can do a diffuse texture, or just one solid color. So if you wanted to change that to a V-Ray material, here's the list of preloaded ones that come with it. So we'll just choose, say, a metal for right now. We'll go like aluminum shiny. Then if you push the drop down button right here, you can go and edit this V-Ray material, and it'll pop up the V-Ray material editor. So now we're getting ready to edit this V-Ray material here. And it comes preloaded with a bunch of generic presets. So if you want a more plastic look, it'll update right up here so you can see how it'll look, you know, glass, paint, liquid, excuse me, you know, car paint, emissive. If you're looking at doing more of a gypboard or gypsum powder 3D print material, you can do a subsurface scattering 2 material, which will just give it that more 3D print look. And then obviously whatever changes you make in here, you can save it and it'll save over that material. Or for the more advanced user, you can go in here and have total control over really pushing those V-Ray materials even farther if you so desire. Like you have all these different features for adding different maps and everything like that. So again, this is for the more advanced user if you so desired to get into it. So we'll just close, and all you do is just hit File, Save, or you can save a new one, create your own V-Ray material that you can add in later. But I'm not going to save over that for right now. We'll just go back to AutoGen. And then over on this other tab where it says Global Materials right here on the left side, if you click that, you can do an override of all the materials within the scene. So I'm going to click this. By default, they just come to like standard gray. I'm going to push this over here. I'm going to start another RT render real quick. So we can see by default, it just will switch it to gray like I suggested right here. But if I use pre-made opaque material, I can go in here and select from V-Ray's, pre-generated machine or pre-generated textures. I can use a diagrammatic one. So let's just say we'll do a 3D print white. And then if I wanted to go in here and change the glass, I can go in here, go to materials, head over to glass, Revit architecture glass. See, and this is all in real time, so it'll give me a great concept of how everything is going to look. I can make changes as needed. And then if I don't want to go through with those at all, I can just simply turn them off. Like so. Like this. Boom, boom, boom. Give it a second and it'll go right back to, of course this is live so it's taking a little bit. I do apologize. So give it a sec. But there we go. So that was a little bit about the material editor and how you can quickly really push those textures to that next level and achieve that photorealistic rendering. So like I said, I'm just going to pause this real quick. Actually, I'm just going to kill this. So next up, we're going to take a look at the environment. So you have your V-Ray Sun right here under the V-Ray Sun tab. You can choose basically the intensity. It's already come stock for real world, so anything higher, if you want to push it farther than 2, you're just going to be blurring the shadows a little bit. The sun intensity just changes, obviously the intensity of it. If you hold down this drop-down menu, you have this dome light, which is great for it basically just makes a dome over your whole image, and then you can stick whatever image you would like in the background, so you can set up HDR images if you'd like, or and you can find those all over the web. You can find free ones or you can find paid ones. And then obviously no light. It just turns off every light in the environment. So, and then you also have the use of fog. So I'm just going to start another RT rendering here real quick. So then under the settings tab over here, I'll pull this over real quick. Under the fog tab, you have the ability to add in real-world simulated fog. So if I were to just check enable right here, under the aerial perspective will give you that hazy look to the objects that are farther away in the distance. So it gives it that, if you're driving down the road and you see something that's kind of a little bit foggier in the distance, that's what, excuse me, that's what this will simulate. So obviously if you turn down the view distance, 1000, it'll change it up a little bit. And then with the environmental fog, this is used for volumetric light. This is where you get those God rays and everything like that. So that's how you can create all those really nice subtle effects in your scene. And all you would need to do is just adjust the exposure all you would need to do is adjust the exposure of the scene to compensate for the environmental fog. So next up, we'll talk a little bit about some camera settings. So under the exposure tab is where we have our camera settings here. So again, I'm just going to pause this real quick. Slide this over here. So notice how it's grayed out when I'm in RT render. But once we switch back to production render here in a second, I'll show you the different drop-down menus that it has. So I'm just going to go ahead and start playing this again. And within the camera settings feature, you have the exposure. So it works exactly like a regular camera would. Smaller the number, the brighter it gets, allowing more light to come in. And you can see it's real time. So it's a great way to visualize how, light's going to be bouncing off in the scene, or just how that whole scene is going to look. White balance, you have total control over that. I'm just going to pop this back up here. Put this back to where it was, 14. Yep, there we go. You have your defocus feature, so you can really get in there and use the depth of field. Obviously, if I were to change this super low, I broke it. There we go. Great. If I can go even smaller, 600. You also have this, start to blur areas around what aren't in focus, or that are not in that focus distance. And then you also have this optical vignetting. So this just simply will give you a nice like a vignette shadow around the edges of your scene. See that? Simply just back that down a bit. All right. Now if I just completely kill this right here and go back to the production render, you'll see this menu is not grayed out anymore. And what it's doing right here, after it just got done baking the light map, or the light maps, it was caching all that stuff within the memory. So now it's just rendering the final image. And I can pause this, or I just let it finish real quick. But under this, under the drop-down menu, you have a stereoscopic camera, which will give you, I'll show you right here. Camera. Here's what you would get from a stereoscopic camera. So this is great. What it will do is create two virtual cameras based on the current camera, one for each in a pair of stereoscopic images. So you could use this for Google Cardboard, your Samsung Gear VR, and so on and so forth with all the other VR cameras out there. And then you have this VR cubic 6x1, which is this right here. So VR camera, this will take 6 cameras and generate a cubic map image that you can use for an interactive panorama that can be used to showcase your work on the web, or like on Facebook doing the 360 videos, things like that. And then the last one is VR stereo camera, the 12x1, which is right here. So what this one will do, it will take and combine 12 different cameras to use both a stereoscopic and VR camera to create a fully 3D interactive panorama, which you can then, like I stated before, bring that into like the HTC Vive or the Oculus Rift or any of the other VR headsets that are out there. All right, moving on. Then when we're in the rendering mode, I'm just going to switch back to, I'm going to start another production render here. So in the settings tab, you have all these different channels right here. And if you hit this enable denoiser channel, it will automatically check all these other channels that come with it. So this is great for if you want to take your renders and bring them to like another photo editing software like Photoshop, you will get all these extra channels that come with it. So I'll go back to my desktop, view renders. So I just did a quick little export with denoiser enabled, and here you get the alpha channel, all the different channels that you need to bring that into Photoshop and start compositing and have total control over how you want that final image to look. So here's what the final image looked with just a basic V-Ray 3D print shader on it. Well, then I can bring that into Photoshop, and add in a custom background with my alpha channels and have better control over my reflection tabs and things like that. And what the denoiser feature will do, it will take a noisy image and it will smooth it. It will smooth it like to the point where it's not noisy anymore. And it's all GPU accelerated, and it will also help in low light scenes. So, and then going back to Swarm real quick, if we had multiple Swarm machines set up, we could see, each one right here and then tag those, and they would help with the rendering process as well. So now we're going to move into the V-Ray frame buffer. So I'm just going to start a quick production render here real quick. Let this go for a second. So what we're going to be doing is down here you have different, if you guys are familiar with Photoshop, all these will be familiar to you. You have your global controls, so you have control over your white balance, your exposure, and you can edit all these as the render's going, and it won't slow it down at all. So, and then you can also go in here, and you can add a stamp if you would like. So if you want to remember what this one did, we'll just add one real quick. We'll say test render. And there it sits, right there. And then you can also go in and add like different variables, like what settings you use for here, and things like that. And then the history tab. So this is great for if you want to sit there and preview different images. So I will just start one real quick. So I'll go back to here, go back to my pictures, V-Ray renders, select folder. We'll hit OK. So you can see here I already selected 2 of them. And then if I want to set this one as my A and then set this one as my B, I can sit here and scrub back and forth and see which ones I like better, or the differences between the 2, or how each one is, what's affecting what. Yep. So we're getting a little bit shorter on time. So, and then another really cool feature is we can delete this. You can do mask by region. Here, I will delete that. We'll start a new one real quick. You can do mask by region. So if I just wanted to render that and go start a new RT render, it will just render that certain image, that certain region that I selected. And getting ready to go. And now I will open it up to questions, because it's pretty much all I have for you guys today. Definitely feel free to drop some questions in the queue, and I will do my best to get to you as quickly as possible. A question came in: does Revit take advantage of multiple cores, threads, or is it just a single core to speed up the render? It will do its best to use as much of your resources on your own local machine as possible without breaking it. But like I stated before, if you set up a swarm render, you can designate which machines and how much of each machine is being used for that machine, and you can control all that through the web. So, hope that answers your question. But like I said before, please feel free to reach out to us with questions that you guys may have, or comments, concerns, and I will do my very best to get to you as soon as possible. Hope everyone had a fun time listening to my presentation on V-Ray for Revit, and hopefully everybody can start using this, because it's really an amazing, powerful tool that is really great for designers.